This is Kate Swoboda, creator of YourCourageousLife.com, director of the Courageous Living Coach certification at TeamCLCC.com, and author of the book, The Courage Habit, which is available at booksellers and at Amazon. The Your Courageous Life podcast is all about going after what you want and creating and living a more courageous, emotionally resilient life. Might drop a couple of F-bombs, so maybe don't listen with your kids in the backseat of the car. And here we go with today's episode. All right, so let's talk about living in the moment. Let's especially talk about it because it's pretty tough to live in the moment under everyday circumstances. And it's doubly tough to live in the moment when there's like a raging pandemic and a lot of social unrest and some very necessary reckoning with oppression that is systemic, and people are feeling a lot of fear. So let's particularly talk about how to live in the moment with fear. I'm going to say over and over and over again throughout the body of my work that I don't believe in the concept of fearless. I think that we don't ever achieve fearlessness. I think that what we do is we stop letting fear control our lives, but we always live with it. So, people say things like, oh, but I'm not afraid. And I don't believe it because everyone is afraid somewhere. People just don't always claim it. Fear shows up differently than people realize it is showing up. So fear shows up as, I've got this like long list I made once of every single way that I could think of for fear to show up. It's probably not a complete list, but here we go. Resistance, low-grade anxiety. And as you're listening to this list, let me back up a little bit. As you're listening to this list, if any of these apply to you, then guess what? Fear is present. Okay, so fear will show up as resistance, low-grade anxiety, chronic forgetting, not feeling like it, skipping out on things that you committed to, e-courses, meetings, calls, group get-togethers that you committed to, not doing what you said you'd do, procrastination, self-sabotage, creating drama, running mental drama in your head, replaying old situations over and over and getting triggered, imagining future scenarios and planning a defense, persistent anxiety that you do nothing about, giddiness, like not giddiness like you're really, really excited, but like the kind of giddiness where you're kind of like, oh, I'm kind of giddy. And it's not a bad thing. It's just there's some fear showing up there with the giddiness. Detachment, numbing out, abuse of substances, abuse of people, abuse of the self, adrenaline junkie, high-risk behaviors. It's oddly enough this kind of like an amplification of fear in an attempt to wipe out the fear. Cheating on partners, dragging your heels, refusing to make a choice and pretending as if that is not a choice. Rationalizing, oh, I'll do it next year. Justifying, oh, now's just not the right time. Buying more books or courses that you don't read or finish or ever utilize. Creating more obstacles for yourself that are just going to make it harder for you to do the thing you want to do, such as accruing more debt, being overcommitted. Lying, fibbing, manipulating the facts. Some people don't like to identify as having lied. They'll go, oh, well, it's a little fib. Oh, it's just, well, like, no. Lying, fibbing, manipulating the facts. There's fear there. Otherwise, people would tell the truth. Trying to be right at all costs. Making it someone else's fault. Rigid fundamentalism. Hating the other or people who are perceived as or labeled as other. Arrogance, all of the isms, racism, sexism, classism, condescension, taking rigidly fixed positions on issues, accumulation of stuff, dogma, attachment to a label or over-identification with a group. Fear will show up as rage. Fear will show up as sadness. Fear will show up as depression. Fear will show up as avoidance. Fear will show up as shame. Running stories without checking them out. So going in this whole thing about what this person did and what it must mean about you, instead of just going to the person and going, hey, can I check out a story with you? I'm running a story that you don't think that I'm capable of this thing. And I just wanted to have a dialogue with you about that. Holding grudges and resentments. Taking care of everyone but yourself. That is a form of fear. Using caring for others as an excuse not to do the things you've committed to. That is a form of fear. Shaming and blaming others. Perfectionism. Taking no position whatsoever and going through life as this amorphous blob shaped by others with no personal identity. So there is fear there when somebody's just like, well, I just don't get political. Yeah. Or you're choosing not to get political because you're afraid of the conflict that can sometimes arise if you actually take a stand for something. Or, oh, I'm just neutral in this situation, conflict between family members. Well, being neutral has its benefits. And in all of this list, I've done all of these. I'm sure we have all of us have done all of these. But there is some level of, okay, let's look at our lives a little bit. Let's stop doing this thing where we deny that we are afraid. I just don't let fear get to me. Well, everybody does at some point. And I'm hoping you'll laugh with me a little bit because it's kind of just utter folly and madness that so many of us go through life pretending that we aren't afraid or that fear doesn't touch us, and that with, I don't know, like enough meditation and the right yoga pants, we're never going to be afraid. I'd love it if the world would ditch living without fear or becoming fearless as goals that are worthy of our time on this planet. And I really hope too that as I share this with you, that the denial of the fear doesn't help. And it certainly is an impediment to living in the moment, which is why I'm going there. I'm hoping it'll light a bit of a fire under our butts and get us, all of us listening to this. Like, let's not waste our time. Let's not waste time even doing the whole I never get afraid or fear never gets me thing. When you aren't caught up in the hustle to avoid your fear, you get to do something more powerful, which is really living in the moment from a place of courage. When you aren't wasting your time denying that you're afraid, like this pitying, calm, Zen-like gaze people do. There is nothing to fear, my child. Fear is but an illusion. Yeah, it's an illusion. I would agree with you there. And it hooks a hell of a lot of people. So let's just deal with that. Everyone who takes a risk, emotional or otherwise, experiences fear. Let's not be in denial. So you say you want to live in the moment. You say you want to be present. You want acceptance. You want surrender. You want to be with things as is. None of these things are even possible as long as your relationship to fear is a relationship of stuffing it away or trying to deny its existence or making it wrong for existing. The fighting against fear thing also becomes a way that we deprive ourselves of the ability to live in the moment, because we can't live in the moment if we're practicing all of the ways to avoid living in the moment. Sometimes fear is what comes up in the moment. I'm just pausing there for a second to really suggest that we take a breath and integrate that. It's not possible to live in the moment if we are spending a lot of our moments pushing away the fear or trying to avoid it or deny that it exists. Sometimes fear is what comes up in the moment. So if what you want is acceptance in your life, especially of yourself and the people you live with, examine your fears. Be with your fears. Get curious about them. Dialogue with it. Don't shut it away. Fear just is. It's a challenge along the way. It's one all of us must meet. breathing with and being with fear as it arises could be one of the most powerful meditations you could ever practice, one of the most powerful ways to live in the moment that you could ever practice. So what might you do in this very moment? If we take on the idea that each moment in our lives is fresh and available for us right here and right now, there's not some, I got to think about that before I can do that. What would you choose in this moment? I said this on another podcast episode recently that I've been calling out more the idea of, I'm going to think about that as a response, because really what, I'm going to think about that means for most people, I think, like 90% of the time is, I'm not actually willing to make a concrete decision or take action around that. So I'm going to tell myself that I'm going to think about that to buy myself some time from having to actually make a decision about this, take some kind of action about this. There is immense value in pausing to really get clear on what you think about something. So I'm not speaking to that. I'm just saying, check in with yourself if I'm going to think about that becomes a delay tactic. What might you do in this very moment? What might you choose? What might you practice? What might you breathe into and be in your life if you were willing to accept that your fear exists and that the process of trying to avoid it, outrun it, pretend it isn't there is exhausting and it keeps you from living in the moment? A thought. What if the meditation for you of being with fear were to start right here, right now? Like, all right, my lovely heart, what is it I'm afraid of? Go ahead, I'm listening, fear. What is it you want to tell me? And if your fear comes in and says, what I want to tell you is we're not having enough fun, or I need you to be gentler with me, or I'm really tired and I need more rest. Great. You have just gained some valuable information from being willing to live in the moment with your fear. If what your fear says is something like, you're lame, why can't you get it together? That is fear speaking in a disrespectful voice, and that is not what I'm inviting in. I would actually say if your fear is coming that way, you use a tool that we teach it in the Courageous Living Coach certification. It's a tool that I have in my book, The Courage Habit. I talk about it. It's one I learned from the incredible coach, Matthew Marzell. Redo, please. So when I'm sitting down to check in with my fear, to live in the moment and be really real and authentic, in this moment, I'm really afraid. Let me pause. Fear, what is it you want to tell me? And when my fear pops up and is like, well, nobody likes you, you're not enough, hold on a minute, redo, please. I am open to hearing what it is you have to say, fear, but it has to be phrased respectfully. So basically, y'all, what I'm saying is that I talk to myself in my head, and I think it's one of the more sane practices I've ever undertaken. We all talk to ourselves in our heads anyway. This is another thing that people get in denial about. I don't have an inner critic. Oh, yes, you do, my friend. Just link arms with me now. Come on. Of course you do. It might not be showing up right now. It might not be a voice in your head that rules your life and keeps you from living the life you want, but it's there. So let's not be in denial about that either, because that too, the things that we're in denial about, that we aren't willing to admit to, are things that actually keep us from living in the moment. So if you want to live in the moment, if you want presence, surrender, acceptance, and living in the now, then truly be willing to go into the now. Truly be willing to go into the now, even if the now has fear. Truly be willing to live in the moment with fear, or live in the moment with, oh, what if I don't do it right? Or live in the moment with, this is uncomfortable. Or live in the moment with, but things might change. Or live in the moment with, but I don't know what I'm doing. being with what arises without setting a condition on it is incredibly powerful. Being willing to live in the moment with your fear is the very thing that will help you to stop letting fear control your life. And you will get a richer and deeper experience of actually living in the moment every time you step into that. All right, that's today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You know you can continue the work and the fun if you want to. Head on over to yourcourageouslife.com/begin and become a Your Courageous Life subscriber, because as soon as you sign up, you get access to an entire library of worksheets and audios and other bonuses. And of course, you'll be receiving more courage in your inbox. And who wouldn't love that? You can learn more about the Courageous Living Coach certification at teamclcc.com. You can get the Courage Habit at your local bookseller, on Amazon, wherever you like. We can even connect on social media. I'm on Facebook at Your Courageous Life. So look for facebook.com/Your Courageous Life. And I'm on Instagram as Kate Courageous. And I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. So here's to you, using these courageous tools in your life and creating a real ripple effect of good. And again, thanks so much for listening. I love it that you're here.